So Sarah Wilson is our next guest for today's International Women's Day talks. Sarah is going to talk about what you think you become. Now, Sarah Wilson is a leadership coach and she is a social housing consultant and also director of Coastal Coaching Sussex. Sarah has been with us with our Women in Leadership Special Interest Group series, Sisters Doing It for Themselves. So for those that are part of our Women in Leadership Special Interest Group, you will notice Sarah's face is familiar. Sarah, if you would like to start sharing, we can get going straight at 10 to if you're happy to.
Yes, absolutely. Let me find the right screen and let me know when you can see it.
Yes, we can see your screen. You're about to put it in full screen.
Amazing. Fabulous.
There you go. Over to you, Sarah. Thank you for being with us today.
No problem at all. Thank you so much for joining me, everybody. It is lovely to join you today. I know that we've got quite a shorter session, so I am going to crack on with things. So let me just first introduce myself to those who don't know them. So my name's Sarah Wilson. I'm a leadership mindset coach, and I specialise in supporting people who have struggled with emotional change or challenge, and they are carrying that burden with them. And today I wanted to talk to you about the power of thought and how important it is that we curate what is going on in our brains by raising awareness of what it is that we're thinking. So the theme for International Women's Day this year is accelerate action. And it certainly feels in the last few weeks that the world has completely gone crazy. So in terms of accelerating action, one of the best things that we can do is start with us inside and hopefully change our little corner of the world that then has a bigger ripple effect. So International Women's Day. Sad fact, we won't actually achieve gender parity until 2158 at the current rate of progression. That's 133 years' time. So whatever we start doing today is all about leaving a legacy for other generations, for our children, for our children's children. And what better way to do that than to start role modeling the right mindset behaviours to be able to pass that down. We've actually, as the UK, reached our lowest rank in gender equality in a decade in the workplace. 18th place now in the Women in Work Index. So even more important to start focusing on the things that we can control rather than all of the things that we can't. It starts with you. So let's accelerate that action by looking at ourselves and what we can do with ourselves to help this accelerating of action. So there are lots and lots of things now about getting more women into the boardroom, getting them into decision maker levels, but it doesn't matter how wide open the door is if ultimately you don't feel confident enough to walk through it. In addition to that, if you do get a role as a decision maker, it's really important that you share your perspectives, that you share your thought processes. And again, if you don't have the confidence to do that, it is such a shame because people are missing out on your valuable contribution and your individuality that you will bring, because we all have a story. Everybody has a story, and you can choose for it to be a heavy burden, or it can be part of the rich tapestry of you. And certainly for a number of years, I treated mine as a really heavy burden. But actually now, in doing the inner work and in supporting myself, I now see it as part of the rich tapestry of who I am. And in fact, a little while ago when we had Chinese takeaway, we got those fortune cookies. And when we opened the fortune cookie, mine said, would you go through everything you've been through to have what you have now? And my answer was yes, honestly, I would. Because what I have gained from that and the ability to help other people in that situation has become so valuable and such a big part of my life that actually it was my story that made me. And so now I have quite a lot of gratitude for the things that have happened, but you can choose for it not to be a heavy burden. You can stop living in a victim mentality around it and just see it as an important part of who you are. So the power of thought. Everything starts with a thought. Goals start with just a thought. Somebody who has won an Olympic gold medal will have started out with something in their head, a thought that maybe I could do that. maybe I could start to work really hard to get towards a gold. And actually, Olympians, I would say probably across the board, but certainly all the stories that I've read, believe massively in the power of visualization. They visualized every single step of that race. They visualized winning. They visualized moving through the tape at the end. They visualized all of that. So goals always start with just a thought. Inventions, your phone, the computer, the internet, everything started with a thought and then came into being. And look how reliant we are now on our technology. Your dreams. So if you think about your dream house or your dream car, it's a picture and a thought in your head, but you can make that into reality. And also your habits as well. So if there's a habit or hobby that you've started to think maybe you could do, or what the previous speaker was talking about increasing your endorphins, you start thinking about it before it becomes a habit, before it becomes something that you do on a regular basis. So the power of thought is massive. Everything starts with a thought, and what you focus on grows. So if you want to focus on your goal, your dream, your ambition, then actually when you start focusing on that, what you have as a possibility starts to grow as well. If you're focusing on a lack mentality of what you don't have or what you don't want to experience anymore, you're still looking at it. So if you focus on the positivities and the gratitude and all the things that are really going for you, then actually what you end up with is that side of things growing. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. This is me, age 3. I don't know what my mother was thinking with that fringe. I can only assume that she kept trying to make it even and it got so short she had to give up. So this is my inner child. And when I was little, she was a very happy person. But as I grew up, we had a lot of life events that affected us. And I won't go into my story today because I know that we have a bit of restriction and a tight deadline. And Jade will give me a hard Paddington stare if I go over 20 minutes. But what ended up happening is I created a story where there were gaps. So we went from being a very tight-knit family of 3. I was an only child. I still am an only child, and we moved into an area where my parents were clearly having conversations about something and I was excluded. And so being a child, and in fact we do it as humans, if we don't know the full truth, we create a story to fill that gap. And of course, when you create stories as children, there is absolutely no rationality, there is no emotional intelligence in it. It's just something that we take as read. In addition to that, we are programmed as children to really trust and believe in adults. And when they think or say something, we take that as read and we don't question it. And for most of us, we still haven't questioned it well into adult life. Whereas actually, there are lots of questions to ask about it, including a very simple one like, is this actually true? And so your inner child forms a very big part of your story now, what you can achieve and how you can progress. But ultimately, throughout my childhood, I kept reiterating the same thing. The golden thread from my childhood and lots of other people is ultimately, I am not good enough just as I am. And so therefore, I have to keep trying to do better and be better. But of course, the more you try to do that, the more you come away from who you actually are as a person. So let's add another layer onto it. This is the sciencey bit, but I promise to try and keep it a bit more fun. So you have your conscious mind, and your conscious mind is made up of everything that you have experienced and thought now. So this is you right now. So you will have these goals and dreams and wishes and desires, and you want to get that promotion and you want to get more income and you want to do more with your family. So that's your conscious mind. But you also have your unconscious mind, which is your inner child, and they are created from those stories from when you were little. If you think back to what key events happened in your childhood, it will give you a really good idea as to what your inner child is thinking and feeling and how that's affecting you. The most challenging part about this is your conscious mind runs about 5% of the show. Your unconscious mind, however, is the other 95% based on habits, behaviours, thought processes. And their job really is just to keep you safe. It might not seem like that, but if in childhood your normality was a creation of confusion, if it was a creation of chaos, then actually that's what your inner child will want in your adult life. It's strange, because surely what we want is to be comfortable, but our comfort zone is our normality. So if you think back to what you were experiencing around the ages of 7 to 10, that's the normality that your inner child will continue to try and follow. In addition to that, we have ego. Now, this isn't arrogant. This is almost like the gatekeeper. This is the gatekeeper to protect the inner child. So the ego can be extremely loud and tell us that we don't want to do those things, or we don't want to do this, that, and the other. And it's very self-centered, very self-absorbed, created from childhood onwards, from our experiences. And then we have higher self. And the higher self is like the very purest version of us, as if we'd gone through all of the inner work. And you know what? They really know that you can do anything you put your mind to. They have absolute, unwavering faith and unconditional love for you. And they want the very best for you. They want you to go out of your comfort zone, out of your normality, and into a greater stretch and growth phase so that you can move forward. Because really what they want is for you to achieve the things that your conscious mind wants. So she is, or he is, a much, much, much higher version of you who is there, almost like a guardian angel. And once you start to stop for a minute and listen to your body and listen to what's going on inside, you will start to hear little whispers of higher self giving you that encouragement. But it's not something that comes naturally. And at first, nothing will come through and you'll think, this woman's a bit mad telling us to do this. But actually, if you really start to connect with getting in out of your head and into your body, it's such a powerful thing to really find out what's going on so that you can work through those limiting beliefs. You can work through that imposter syndrome. So we have additional layers as well for the female experience. So we have generational trauma, so things that have happened to and with women in the past are then passed down as stories through our line, so through our parents and what have you, and then we take some of that on as well. But we can choose to find the compassion in that and start to let go of those links to those stories that we no longer want because they just simply don't serve us. We've also got societal pressures and stereotypes. And I was doing this talk yesterday and saying to the ladies that I was talking to about the general stereotypes about women are expected to be the one who would be called by school to go and collect the kids if they were poorly, or they are the ones who are expected to take time off when they get measles, and all of those things that really mean that we put our careers on hold in order to then serve this purpose that somebody else has put onto us. And societal pressures about, you know, there's a lot going on now where I think more people are choosing that they don't want to have children and then struggling with the judgment of other people on it. So there's a lot of pressure on us as women to, you know, have a job like we don't, or have a career like we don't have a family, and then have a family like we don't have a career. And trying to juggle so much is really hard on us sometimes. There's also safety for women. So I don't know a single woman who hasn't had to go through a bit of a checklist on a night out to make sure that she's parked in a well-lit area and that she can get back there without having to go through a side street or alleyway, and held their keys in their hands so they've got them to hand just in case anything happens, and then also cross the road. And for this one, we really need our allies. So we really need men to be standing up, not women to tell men off, but men to be standing up and seeing and calling out that behaviour and saying, actually, mate, that's not okay. Don't talk to her like that, or don't behave that way. That's not acceptable. So we really need our allies to increase the safety for women. Then at work, we also have the glass ceiling. So we have the authority gap, and I've certainly experienced this firsthand, where I've brought up an idea in a meeting and there's just been tumbleweed, but then a man said it 7 minutes later and suddenly it's the greatest idea ever. It's really frustrating to not be heard as women, but that doesn't mean to say that we should stop shining our truth and shining our light. It's really important that we carry on doing that. Obviously, one of the biggest things is a gender pay gap, which based on the parity gap is going to be a gender pay gap for quite some time. And also we have a lack of representation at senior levels. And I quite often have a look at companies and see who's got what leadership team and who's on it, and still feel really happy when I see a woman's photo there, and very, very few where there are more women than there are men. So there is still work to do. And I do strongly believe that our inner story is a big thing that can prevent us from doing that. I'm just doing a time check. Right. Okay. We're all right. Okay. So what can we control? Well, not very much. We can't control Donald Trump. We can't control what other people think of us. What we can control is ourselves. And it's very important that we take that ownership and responsibility to start to look at those things that we can do to help ourselves. So somebody shared this amazing analogy with me that I will share with you now around your inner child and your conscious mind. So this lady rowing tirelessly on the top right, she is your conscious mind. She is you as you are now. And the submarine under the water is a naval submarine. And that naval submarine is programmed to go in a specific way. And that's your unconscious mind wanting to get you back to your normality. Whether that is comfortable or not is irrelevant. That's how it's programmed. And so this lady at the top, doesn't matter how hard she rows towards her hopes, her dreams and her desires, until she does the inner work and sorts out the programming on the submarine, she's going to keep rowing and feeling exhausted without necessarily achieving what she wants to achieve. So it's the inner work, it's the deep sea dive that we need to do to achieve the things that we have got available to us. I really wanted to find a female version of this, but for the sake of it being such a good visual, I have chosen this one. So this is showing the generational trauma moving down. So what would it be? Granddad, I suppose, at the start, and then passing down to their next child, who then tries to pass down to the next one. But we are starting to be that generation now who are putting the shield up and saying, no, we don't want to do that behaviour for our children. We want to create something better. We want to create something more nurturing, because you can't shame somebody into change anyway. Whereas if you encourage them and focus on how great they are, actually there's more chance of them achieving something that they want to achieve. So the inner work is about breaking that cycle from whatever your parents showed to you and whatever adults in your life at that particular time were showing and role modeling at the time. The golden thread from your childhood, which may well lead to the same thing of ultimately, I am not good enough just as I am. And then working through those inner parts of your conscious mind, your unconscious mind, your ego and your higher self, in order for you to step up and inspire. Because as leaders, it is not just you that this affects. This is also your teams. This is also the organisation. There is a much, much, much bigger and wider ripple effect that all of this work does. So when I was younger, I was convinced that my cards were dealt and I had to follow the path that was made for me. But actually, the most freeing thing that I did was to completely turn this on its head and say, but what if I could take control? What if I could have a completely different experience? And so I decided to explore what would happen if the opposite were true. And I could deal my own cards and I could create my own path. So when I was changing my story and my life is 360 degrees different to how it was, I focused on my inspiration, which was my 3-year-old son. I didn't want him thinking that my experience was normality. I chose to stop the patterns of behaviour, the things that weren't serving me anymore. I started establishing a relationship with myself. I started to look at what sparked joy in my life. And I started to intermittently stop throughout the day and think about, what am I thinking and feeling right now? What are the thoughts coming in that I no longer want? And I choose myself. over and over again, because a personal development story is not a straight line. It's not linear. Your progress over time, if you zoom out, will look nice and straight, but if you zoom in, it's going to be up and down, and you're like, oh, I've got to this bit again, and what have you, because it is hard work. But choosing yourself, choosing to get back up over and over again is such a vital part of making that change. So when you are thinking about what you no longer want, you are still focusing on those things. So if you're thinking about lack, anxiety, confusion, lack of confidence, you're still looking at them. So make a list instead of the things that you want to work towards, and turn yourself around. So you are working for inner peace. You are working on your confidence. You are working on progressing in the workplace. Focus on that rather than what you have left behind. Otherwise, you will continue looking at it. And of course, what you focus on grows. So that's what's going to grow as well. So here's some life audit questions, and I'm really conscious of time. So what I'm going to do is pop them all up on the last slide, and you are welcome to take a screenshot of that if you would like to. These are some really good journaling prompts of how you can help yourself, and I will speak to Jade and see if we can ensure that the slides are sent out to you. Yep, Jade's giving me a thumbs up, just to make sure that you have got these, because these are incredibly powerful questions that can really help to shape your mind. So if what you think you become, who are you choosing to be? Thank you very much.
Thank you for leaving us on that note, Sarah, and for sharing your wisdom and prompts as well to make us really think about who we are is what we become. So we need to start making those changes to be that person that we want to be.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
I'm assuming we probably don't have time for questions, do we, Jade?
We can stay on for 5 minutes if everybody's happy to. We've got 30 minutes until our next session, so we've got a short break. But if there are any questions, then yes, I'm happy to stay on if you are, Sarah, for a couple of minutes.
Yes, absolutely. That's fine. I've also just popped up some QR codes if you want to follow me on LinkedIn, or if you want to book a call to chat to me about how we can change your inner story as well. Any questions coming up? Let me just stop sharing my screen, otherwise I won't be able to see anything.
Thank you.
Okey-dokey.
Feel free to unmute or use the chat box if you're unable to unmute, and I can help read out some of those questions. We've got Claire typing. Oh, thanks, Sarah. Fab session.
No problem. It was a bit of a whistle-stop tour today.
It is. Sometimes 20 minutes isn't enough, and sometimes it is, depending on the content. And you know, we always do a power hour with you, Sarah, so it was difficult given today's time frame, but we really appreciate you coming on. And we will hear more from you in the future as well.
Absolutely.